Welcome to Belief, Being, and Beyond with your host, Granddaughter Crow. Hi, everybody. Granddaughter Crow here with yet another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. And you know us, every now and again, we like to do roundtable dialogues. And you know what? Tonight's roundtable dialogue is on the topic of community. Moreover, spiritual community. Seasonally, it is autumn here in the Northern Hemisphere, and kids are going back to school, and there is a community focus, especially as we head into the winter, which I think is just natural. So, our spiritual practice can range from being a solitary practioner to being a part of a larger coven, a kindred, or even a small witchy book club. Community and a sense of community can change throughout the years, both individually as well as collectively. So, we will be exploring the concept of community, how it changes, and any insights for our future. We have amazing guests with us this evening, so I know it will be a wonderful dialogue. However, let's not stop here. I personally would like to encourage you to consider this topic in your own life and even bring this dialogue or a form of dialogue into your community. With that being said, it is my brightest honor to bring to you tonight's roundtable dialogue on community. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh my goodness, look at these lovely faces that we have. Let's take a quick moment and introduce ourselves. So, Deborah Blake, go ahead and introduce yourself. Let us know what you're up to, where we can find you.
Hello, beautiful people. I'm Deborah Blake. I am the author of soon to be 20 books on witchcraft. I don't know how that happened. I think it's because I'm really old. As well as the Everyday Witch Tarot, Everyday Witch Oracle, and another couple of decks, and a bunch of fiction because, why not? You can find me at DeborahBlakeAuthor.com. Yes, I made that up all by myself. It was a real stretch. Um, I have been involved with witchcraft and witchcraft community since I'm going to say the mid 90s. I have met Judika at PantheaCon a couple of times. It was a great convention that sadly no longer exists. I haven't met Matt in person, but I believe I blurbed his first book. So I'm going to take all the credit for everything he's done ever since then. Why not, right? My big thing about witchcraft, I call myself the everyday witch because to me, it's all about walking your talk every day. And whether you walk your talk by yourself or with other people, that's up to you.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Deborah Blake. So, Matt, let's turn it over to you. Introduce yourself. What's going on?
Okay, hi, I'm Mat Auryn. I've written three and a half books now. The most famous probably being Psychic Witch. The one half is Pisces Witch with Ivo Dominguez Jr., who is like my witchy hero as a gay male witch. Um, I also have a podcast called The Circle is Podcast with actress Rachel True, who is best known for The Craft and has an awesome tarot deck. I got into witchy things when I was a small child, and I talk about this a little bit in my second book, Mastering Magic. But for me, I didn't have a sense of community. Like I just had books. And I was the kid that was always trying to form my own little covens in school with the other girls. Not knowing what we're doing, and they were never as long-term interested in it as I was. Until I was probably in my early 30s, and I was living in New England, and I was fortunate enough to attend the Temple of Witchcraft, which is Christopher Penzak's tradition. Fantastic. And then got involved with the Cabot tradition, Laurie Cabot. And then the whole, I was a professional reader in Salem, so I got involved with the whole Salem community. And then got involved with, Devon Hunter and Sacred Fires and Storm Fairy Wolf and Black Rose Witchcraft. And then just the larger, online as well as conventions. I have not met anyone here. I'm aware of everyone here and their work, except for
Yeah.
Judika, who I absolutely adore. And I had the honor of writing a foreword for her, one of the like 20 that I've had the honor to do now. But that's me. I don't know what else to say, so I'm gonna pass it on.
Perfect. Judika, so lovely to have you. Judika Joy Illes. Just saying.
That's
Her
right.
middle name.
That's right. I am so honored and grateful to be in this just illustrious and wonderful company. I do know both Deborah and Matt in person. I've had the privilege to meet both of you, and I don't see you either of you enough. I would love to see both of
Mm.
you more in person. My name is Judika Illes. I am from New York City. I think most people know me, or they know my books. I don't even know if they know me, but they know my book, most famously Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, and also Encyclopedia of Spirits. I've written a dozen other books. In the last year, I've become a card deck creator, which still, I need to pinch myself sometimes. That just happened. Um, and so that is Deborah and I are of the same vintage. So that is
Like fine wines, we have
like
aged
fine
well.
wine. We are just improving. But I became a deck creator a year ago. And my third deck is about to be published, Prosperity Spells. And so this is my little aside to everybody listening. It is never too late. It is never too late. You can do something new. You can find yourself in wonderful places. It is never, never too late. I am also an editor for Wiser Books, so I have the privilege of working on other people's wonderful magical books, and that's who I am.
Wow. I love that. Thank you, Judika. So let the games begin. Jenny, let's get into the questions. Let's get into the dialogue.
Yeah, so our theme tonight is community. And so we were thinking if we could kind of talk about past, present, future of community. So that's where we'll be going. We're going to start with if everybody could just kind of loosely define community. And then what was your first experience with witchy, spiritual, pagan community? Some people already touched on that, but if you could just go a little more in depth for everybody, kind of take us back to that time when you first found community, that would be great.
So I guess we're starting with me,
We are.
because why not? So community is really impossible to define. So I'm so glad you started with me. Um, I will find you. Um, the thing about community is it is less about where you are, if you are together in the same physical space, than where you are in your heart and your mind and your spirit. We have a community right here, right now. We are not anywhere near each other. Some of us have met, some of us have not met, but we are a community because we share values and beliefs and things that are important to us. So for me, that's what makes community. My own personal community is a very eclectic bunch of people who you wouldn't necessarily look at it and go, oh, these folks are going to get along. But because we share those values and interests and beliefs, we do. My first experience, actually, my first experience with witchcraft was a community one. And this is sort of ironic because for people who don't know me, I'm not a people person. Um, I am extremely solitary. I spend most of my time in my house with my cats and, talk to the UPS guy. Um, I am not somebody who goes to parties or events or things like that. So when I found out that, first of all, I was a witch, and second of all, I'm a group witch, I was like, what? What? But yeah, I had a friend back in the day who kept inviting me to do things at her house. And she'd say, "Oh, yeah, a bunch of people are coming over. We're doing a ritual. We're doing these things." And I go, "That sounds great, but people." And finally, one Samhain, she said, "Oh, hardly anybody's going to be there. We're going to do a nice ritual in the park next to my apartment. Just come." And I thought, okay, it's a feast, it's a thing. I got there, there were like, I don't know, 30 people in this tiny apartment. And I went, wait, this is not a lot of people. And people kept coming up
Everyone.
and hugging me. People I'd never met were hugging me and saying weird stuff like "marry me." And I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? And we had a lovely feast. Everybody brought something. And then we went out into the park next to her house and they cast a circle. And I reached out as I had been reaching out for years through various different paths. Only this time somebody reached back. And God and Goddess said, "Well, there you are. Took you long enough." And I went, "What?
Oh,
What? What?" And I joined the group that this woman led, which she didn't even call a coven. She called it a study group. We met every Thursday night, and it was the same bunch of people, but people would come and go. And it was all about learning, and we basically learned the same exact things you would learn in a coven. She just didn't call it a coven until we'd been together for about 4 years. And she came from a very Wiccan background at that point in the mid 90s. Almost everybody who was practicing group witchcraft of any kind, not necessarily witchcraft, there were plenty of individual witches, but group witchcraft was, I think, mostly Wiccan. And so that was where I got my start. And that was where I learned that as much as I am a solitary in most aspects of my life, I love sharing witchcraft with community.
I love that. So, Matt, tell us your definition of community and experience. Take us back.
Oh my God, I don't even know how to define community. Like I've been thinking this whole time. One of the things that I would like to touch on too is because sometimes I hear people saying that like, oh, there is no actual community. This isn't community. And I think like there's a misconception that community is like a Hakuna Matata, like, happy family commune. And it's not like community is messy. It's difficult. I think it falls somewhere between society and family. So, just like family, there's going to be disagreements, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be people you just don't get along with or don't jive with. But for the most part, like Deborah was saying, there is something that brings us all together. There is something that unites all of us. I was fortunate enough, as I was saying, my first introduction to spiritual community was the Temple of Witchcraft, which I can't think of a better introduction to community. Um, I I don't know what else to say on this topic, but I think there's a difference too, and I don't know if we're going to touch on this. The difference between in-person community and online community are vastly different in feeling and things that are talked about. And I mean that even in the sense of like conventions and stuff, like, because there is a community in that, in going to events and going to rituals. And, it's not like everyone is on completely the same page. You have people from different traditions and different magical practices. And, you have hoodoo practitioners with Wiccans, with people from the fairy tradition, from, people that are tradcraft witches. But there is this sort of, I think it's magic that essentially kind of unites everyone under the umbrella of community.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I don't know what else to say at the moment, so I'm gonna pass it on to Judika.
Community to me, kindred spirits, people who are walking the same path. We share an essence. A lot of people belong to multiple communities. It's like, a Venn diagram. We could, depending on your life, have different, you could have the in-person community, you could have an online community, you could have a professional community, a spiritual community. It depends on the person. I I think touching on something that Deborah said, I think to be, I don't know if successful is the right word, but maybe prolific. To be a prolific author, you by nature have to have a very high tolerance for solitude. I had this conversation years ago with Raven Grimassi. You have to be willing to sit in a room by yourself, like in solitary confinement, and have the discipline to, you might want to go out to play, you might want to go out to do other things. You might just want to feel the sunshine, but you stay there and you write the book and you
Mm.
finish that book. So that is a personality that I think a lot of us share. um, I have always been interested in witchcraft. People ask me this all the time. When did you become interested? Always, always. I don't remember a time. I am wired to that. And if you look at my natal chart, you can see it. But I emerged into this lifetime with a love for the magical arts, a love for witches. People read me, my mother read me fairy tales, or I always identified with the witch, and I am talking about being, 2, 3, 4 years old. I come from a family that tolerated that.
Mhm.
Um, at worst, they tolerated it. At best, they thought it was interesting. And we shared, I had metaphysical books at home because my parents also were interested. So it was very available to me. But when I went out to school, and I'm a baby in a family of adults, I'm a happy accident. So when I went to school, especially not my early childhood, but later when I was in school in a suburban area, this, I was very open about all this stuff. I didn't realize that people would disapprove or think it was weird, but they did. And then once I got into school, I was bullied for it. I had a math teacher who called me the mystic one. Like in the middle of class, I'll give this paper to the mystic one. And it was not meant nicely. It was not meant as a compliment. And I came very solitary. I became very shy, very solitary. I didn't speak English well. I had all sorts of stuff. The first time I think I felt community, when I said I was from New York City, that is a very big part of my magical history. I went to the Magical Child. I would have been, this would have been in the late 70s, early 80s, sometime that I went to, this is Herman Slater's store in New York City. And I was very self-conscious by that point. When I went into the store, and I wanted to buy some herbs. And one of the salesmen got up on a ladder and went to get me these herbs, and he dropped them. And everybody in the store turned around to look. And my initial reaction was to be mortified. Yeah, I was mortified. But actually, people wanted to see what fell. Everybody wanted to see what fell, the spiritual significance, which herb fell. And they were welcoming and interested, and nobody was looking at me like I was weird. And I felt very embraced. And I think for a lot of us who were the weird kids, to feel that embrace, right? To feel that embrace is to feel community. I think when we feel it, we know it.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm hearing a lot of like similarities but said differently, but that community can be found in a shop, can be found in, when you're a tourist and your friend pushes you out of the house finally with a kind of a lie. I've been there. Um, fellow Taurian, I understand. And then I'm also hearing like how community can be something you purposely seek out, right? Like you see this group or this educator, this teacher, or this convention, and you're like, I want to be a part of that. Like, I'm gonna take a leap and I'm just gonna do it. And so, community comes in all these different places in all these different ways. And I think that's really beautiful. I just wanted to quickly share my first experience with community because it was kind of different. I've always been loud and proud. So it's the mid 90s, punk Jen in New Jersey with her proud pentacle in the mostly Catholic school. I went to school with John Gotti's nephew. I mean, like, doesn't get more Italian, right? And I'm out there wearing my pentacle. I got pink hair, which was not allowed. And I'm like, this is going to be how I'm going to find my people. And I found the other witch. I feel like there was just the two of us. Found the other one in school, and that was my community. It was a community of two. And then I sought out in college. Someone posted a pagan meetup circle on one of the bulletin boards, and I just like was like, okay, I'm gonna go. I told my mom. My mom's like, oh, that's a man's name. Like, I don't. Let me go with you. She's not really overprotective, so I was like, okay. And then we get there, and he's gay, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna be back in an hour. Like she was just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting kidnapped. And so that was like, you're fine. But that was a really fun meetup because it was similar, it's not a coven. It was just a circle of people from really different backgrounds. And we just got together and like Deborah said, we studied. Like we taught each other what we were learning. We swapped books. The internet was around, but it was really pre-internet where we got into community just to learn and share. And to me, that was a really kind of fun community. So I just wanted to share that too with everybody. Our next question is about the present. So the world is growing and adapting so quickly. What are some current challenges to real community building that we see as people who've been in the community for a while, as well as any guidance for people wanting to build community or seek community?
Oh, damn, we're back to me again. So, I mean, obviously, some of the challenges have to do with how divisive the world is right now. We are living in a time where people, for whatever reason, we're not going to get into that because that's a whole different conversation, feel free to aggressively disagree with people. And so that can be a challenge if you want to put yourself out in, say, on the internet so you can find your people. Then you are risking having somebody else come in and stomp all over your parade, which is just annoying, although, that's why they make block and delete people. That's why. It is a tricky time, but it's also a time of opportunity because we do have ways to find each other that we didn't used to have. I live in a small upstate New York town. Actually, I live outside a small upstate New York town. And I was very fortunate to find this original group of people. And when I left that group, I started my own coven, Blue Moon Circle, in 2004. And we are still together, but we started with three of us. I had this idea where I was going to have a huge, but no, there was three of us, and the core members are still together. We've had other people come and go, but people are looking for community, and it can be hard to find in person depending on where you live. There are a few small covens where I am. Most of them, like mine, are not really open. They're not taking random new people. They don't just invite anybody. And I have a lot of my readers who say, I live in the deep South. I can't put a pentacle out where anybody can see it. I can't tell anybody I'm a witch. So they find their people through online things. For me, part of my community, and this is a community I've built on purpose, is my readers, the people who read my books and who are looking for somebody to talk to connect with. So, I recently started a coven on my Patreon, which, is not a thing I would have thought of. People kept asking me to do an online coven. And I'm like, I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I can't figure out how to do this. And, I've had a Patreon for a few years and I sort of went, oh, well, I mean, I'd have to charge people money for it. And I feel weird about that. On the other hand, it'll weed out the people who really aren't interested. And we've got a nice little group of people who have found each other and they're from all over the place. And they're very grateful to have this thing. So I think there are both limitations and opportunities because of the world we're living in now. And you have to deal with the limitations and, for the most part, I think, ignore them the best you can and take advantage of the opportunities. And if you are looking for a community, I guarantee you there is one out there for you. Maybe you haven't found it yet, but you know, follow us. We know the way.
Follow us. We know the way.
I
Like,
stole that.
subscribe, share.
There's a great Scottish guy who posts things on Instagram who says,
Oh,
"Follow me, I know the way," and I love his stuff. So I just stole it.
I love that.
My
And I,
favorite card, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Judika.
My favorite card, tarot card, is the moon card. We don't know the way. We're just going.
Yes.
It's true. I'm lying. Don't believe anything I say. And this is something people should realize. I think people read our books and they see us online and they think, oh, these people, yeah, we know their names. They've written books. They know all the answers. No, we know. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself. The older I get and the more I've been doing this, the more I realize I know nothing. I know
Yes.
less now than I did when I started. I don't know how that's possible. And that's okay. It's okay not to know all the answers. The seeking is the thing that's important, and seeking community is part of that.
Well, the more you know, the more you realize there is to know.
100%. I would have to add two things. We may not have all the answers, but we do know how to ask a lot of questions, and that kind of leads us the curiosity, the hunger for wanting to know more. And I would be remiss if I didn't say what my husband told me a long time ago. He said, all of us, we're just the island of misfit toys. Like now we are all solitary until all of a sudden we're like, yeah, I think weird too, and bringing it into this place. And so ask questions, guys. Join the island of misfit toys because you'll belong here, kindred spirit. Okay, so Matt, what would you say are like the challenges, etc., and overcoming?
Yeah, so before I jump into that, I want to respond to what you said because it's so funny because my husband says that all the time about the island of
See?
misfit toys. He's always saying, witches are the island of misfit toys. And the question thing, I have a section in Psychic Witch about that. And I quote one of my favorite quotes is by Orion Foxwood, and I quote him in that book, which is the witch's holiest symbol is the question mark. And I love that. Like that's such a brilliant quote. But yeah, I think one of the biggest changes that I've seen in community is obviously like the technology boom and specifically social media and algorithms. And I don't think it just affects us as witches and magical people. It affects everyone in the world and every community in the world and how we're seen and how we're visible. We don't have all the answers. But one of the things that's, well, to back up a little bit, I'm doing in October, I'm doing an online event with Foolish Fish. And, for the things that we present, he's like, oh, just, whatever you're researching right now and whatever you're really excited about, present on that. And I was like, but I'm not in a place to be teaching, what I'm excited about and what I'm researching about, and I don't feel confident about doing that. And he was like, wow, I wish more people felt like that these days. And I was like, yes, because I definitely resonate with what Deborah was saying, which is that like, the longer I do this work and the more that I seek and I search, the more I realize I don't have all the answers and I don't know all the things. And I get more comfortable with that as well. I get comfortable with that idea of not knowing and not needing to have all the answers. I'm very comfortable with pointing to other people, and being like, oh, I think this person may have the information or that person may have the information. I see a version consistently. My friend Thorne Coyle has a brilliant quote that I quote all the time, which is they say that, beware the teacher that only has students. And I love that quote, because I see that a lot online, in online spaces of people popping out of nowhere, presenting themselves as authorities, and then hitting all the spiritual pitfalls that you see with someone that wasn't necessarily raised in community or didn't necessarily have strong teachers themselves or still have teachers to call them out on their shit, on their crap, which is an important part of community and an important part of learning, I think, is for people to be able to like call you out in a respectful way or like, even like my husband, part of our relationship is him calling me out on things and me being like, okay, well, like, let me take a moment and look at myself and see if, there's merit to this or not.
Mhm.
But I think that, with algorithms, there's been a push, specifically social media, there's an emphasis on pushing forward divisive things, controversial things, things that'll get an angry reaction and a divisive reaction. And I think that's very, very harmful to our community. I come from a place personally where like I have such a love for the people that paved the way for us to be able to do these things. I see a lot of, young influencers come on and start bashing, the people that literally like were on the front lines of fighting for us to call ourselves witches publicly and to be able to have these conversations and have difficulties. Have all of their teachings aged well? No, like,
Of course.
but like our teachings will probably not all age well either, and that's the nature of progress. I loved Judika did this beautiful forward for Dion Fortune, where, there's I love that like Judika, like in that forward, she's not dismissing the things that were problematic about Dion Fortune and her stances and her things that she said at the time, but also, there's this balance of understanding where Dion was at the time, but also understanding that that's also not an excuse and that we can honor and treasure what has come before without throwing the baby without out with the bathwater and understanding like, oh, well, these may have been like where we can do better now and where we can do better in the future. And I think social media culture has created this sort of like, I need to agree with everything in a book, or with a person for it to be valid at all. And I come from, a perspective that's so different that like I don't agree with anyone 100%, I'm not looking for my Bible. I'm not looking for my Joseph Smith, we are a community of people that have disagreements and we're having a conversation of figuring out where we're going and what our paths are individually as well as collectively. I don't know if I answered your question, but mostly I think social media and algorithms and who it pushes forward as authorities can sometimes be problematic in forming community and getting a taste of what actual community with actual leadership and actual embrace of other people can look like versus what is presented now. But
Can I just say, since I've written like so many books, I don't agree with everything I wrote 20 years ago.
I was about to
yes,
say the
At
same
some of
thing.
my older books, and I'm like, oh, there were so many things I didn't know that I thought I knew that if I were writing that book today, it would look
Yeah.
very different. And that's
yes,
okay.
yes.
That's, I don't have to think that everything that I knew 20 years ago was right. And if anybody calls me out on things, I am happy to admit, yeah, I didn't know everything. I don't know everything now, didn't know everything then. And also my practice of witchcraft has changed
Mm,
a lot over those years.
yes.
Um, but I saw something, where you were talking about people bashing our elders.
Mm,
And I forget, I think I was on TikTok, which I basically put up a cranky crone video and run away. But I happened to see somebody talking about somebody bashing Raymond Buckland,
mm,
who most of us started out with Ray's books. He was one of the people that led the way. And again, I don't agree with everything he wrote. The things he wrote were appropriate to his time and to where witchcraft was then. And we've come some different paths since then. But to bash somebody like that who basically led us all to where we are now, who opened doors so we could be free to practice what we wanted to practice, I just wanted to slap people. That's all.
But
yeah.
people don't know that. You see, I mean, one of the problems is how uneducated and how ignorant people are. I mean, I'm always telling my authors, you cannot underestimate how little people know these days. Going back to what both of you said, I mean, living human beings have to evolve, but books are time capsules.
Mm,
We wrote them at a moment based on who we were and what we knew at that moment. And we can't keep rewriting the same book. I mean, we can't just do another edition of the same book every 5 years to bring it up to date because we've evolved. And hopefully, there's still something in these books that is beneficial and useful. When social media started, I'm old enough to remember a life without social media, which I think is maybe for the younger people a problem because this is something they've they've always had social media. But when social media first started, it was so exciting. We were able to find kindred spirits, and it was very easy to, make friends and sometimes real friends with people all over the world whose work was interesting or who we shared something with. And it was a relaxed and friendly time. I like to go back to the past a little bit as somebody who I, I've always lived in big cities. I have lived in New York and I've lived in Los Angeles, or right outside. And so coming up back in the days before social media, so 70s, 80s, you were so excited to meet somebody who had similar interests. They
mm,
didn't have to be exact interests. I'm interested in astrology. Oh, you're interested in numerology. Oh, wow. They're both divination, huh? You're interested in this. I'm interested in that. And especially in New York, where you have this incredible diversity, you were just you were just happy. A kindred spirit was somebody with these vague ties. And to this day, I identify with if somebody considers themselves a witch or a metaphysical practitioner, they don't have to be the same kind of practitioner as me.
mm,
I don't know if anybody remembers, it was some years ago, there was the fortune teller from Lebanon who went to Mecca and was sort of entrapped by the morality police and was put in death row, and I don't know what happened to him. And he somebody recognized him. He had done a television commercial for Love Magic in Lebanon where it was legal, and he went someplace where it wasn't legal. I feel for that man. I think about that man. He probably has nothing to do with my practice. It's very different, but we are in that same huge guild, diverse guild. And what I see now is this desire for validation. People read very little, and what they want to read something that reflects, oh, yes, you're right. Let me, I'm like a mirror. I'm reflecting back the beliefs you already have, but you can't grow like that. I would encourage anybody who is listening, people always ask me, what should you read? Read everything.
Yeah.
Read everything. Sometimes the book you don't like is the most useful book because you can sit there and go, what was it about that book I didn't like? Why did it irritate me? And it helps you refine your own path. We really are all unique snowflakes, and we have our own paths. And I think there is this fear right now. We all have to, do you believe this? I believe this. Okay, we're safe, we're going to be friends. That person thinks something different, does something different, we're going to ostracize them. And that is terrible for the metaphysical community. And we have to be a living human being, you have to evolve. Because if you're not evolving, you're not living, you're just stagnant. So we all have to continue to learn and to grow, and you should read books and watch all kinds of YouTube videos and take classes
And
from
talk to
sorts of
people who
people
don't agree with you. Talk to people who
respectfully and
do not
nicely.
have the same perspective as you, because maybe there's something about their perspective that will teach you something. You don't
Well,
have to agree with them, but have a discussion.
even not. I mean, you can just be respectful towards people. I'm not talking about people who are being hateful, but everybody doesn't have to think the same thing. We're not the same people. We don't come from the same places. The same thing that serves me might not serve you. So it I keep thinking, um, there's an artist out of New Orleans who years ago, okay, I'm going to represent the moon children in the house now. We've heard from the Tauruses. So speaking for the sun sign cancers, um, Dr. Bob was making these artworks with the slogan, be nice or leave. Um, After I got divorced, I got one of those for my kitchen. Not that I'm, but be nice or leave. And nice doesn't mean bending over backwards and being a patsy, but
Mm.
just to be kind, to be polite, to be respectful. We're 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 all people here. We're all in our own way struggling. So, and somebody might have somebody who you don't think has something to teach you might have something to teach you. If only for you to refine, what did I disagree with?
Mm.
Read a lot of books because these elder bashing, they don't know who these elders are.
Mm.
They think they're not, they're just stuff. You don't always have to have an opinion. You can learn something before you express an opinion.
Well,
Well
and
said.
I,
Yes.
I would like to add real quick too, like not just with books, but like one of the greatest teachers I had in my career was looking at someone that I was like, I will never be like that person. Like, I will never conduct myself that
Yeah,
way. I will
me
never
too.
operate that way. And like, in an indirect way, this like horrible, horrible person
Same,
is one of my
same.
greatest teachers because it
Yeah.
gives me something to compare myself with to be like, is this that person behavior? Like maybe I should like reel it in a bit.
Oh no, absolutely. I had the same experience. I don't want to be like that person. So
It's probably the
it is
same person
it is
too.
no.
Okay.
Well, and we're talking about community, and one of the things about community is it's not just what you want, but what
Yeah,
you don't want.
yeah.
What things about community are important to you and what things are you not willing to put up with? There was a period of time, and hope that that period is behind us. There was a period of time where I knew a number of people who got involved with covens or other spiritual groups that were led by people who were not perhaps the best people to be leading.
Mm,
And people stayed because they needed community so much, because
mm,
they needed that found family, because they needed a spiritual home. They stayed in these communities that were not healthy and
mm.
not good for them. And I hope that at least at this point, people have gotten free from that at least a little bit, and have maybe learned what they don't want, even if they haven't found what they do want.
That's hard though. That's not just the magical community. That's families,
Oh, that's
marriages.
true. That's true.
It's you sometimes, it's not good, but you don't know. But just being part of it's so important to be part of something, and you don't know what else is out there, and it's scary.
Mm.
So, but that is something too. Yeah, that's very important.
One of the things I was talking to a peer about recently is if you're on my social media, I'm pretty outspoken about a lot of things. And I do want to make certain people uncomfortable. Like I to let them know that this is not their space, this is not their community. Like, if you're racist, if you're transphobic, if you're a misogynist, XYZ, like, I rather have like, you know, two black people in my community than like 40 racists, So I think it's hard because like being in a position where community forms around you, you kind of have a responsibility somewhat of that community and the quality of it, which is a difficult thing. I'm not here to try to teach people in 2026 how to be better human beings in how they view other people, on basic things. I think other people are doing that work, and but like I'm not going to create a space that invites people that I see as dangerous for other people in the group. And so like, that's one of the reasons I am so vocally, like pro-trans, like I'll get some backlash, but then I'll get the private messages of people being like, thank you so much, for speaking up and making me feel safe, And I think that's an important part of community too, is that quality control. Um, I don't know where I'm going with that, but it just kind of popped in my
Well,
head.
but I do think standing up for the people in your community, whoever they are, I am also pretty vocal. And I used to try and not be political and not be, and things have changed and
It's
I
changed.
no
Yeah.
longer care. I'm just like, yeah, you don't want to buy my book because you think I said something that offended you? Good, don't read my book. I don't want you to read my book.
Mm.
That's fine. But yes, I want trans people and gay people and people of color and everybody else, who falls outside the accepted norm to feel like they are seen and accepted in my space. And if that means that I never sell a book ever again, I'm fine with that
Well, and
because we have to have each other's backs.
I think that comes down to like what Grandmother Crow was saying, or Granddaughter Crow, sorry, was saying, which is, this idea of us being the island of misfit toys. So like we are the weirdos, mister, like I'm not here to make like white Christian nationalists feel comfortable exploring the occult. Like that's not my audience, that's not my people. I hope I'm not driving this into totally a a divergent part of our conversation, but
No.
yeah, I mean, I 1,000% like I think quality is another thing that is different with online spaces today, because like with the algorithm and stuff like that, it's all about numbers, 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 bigger, 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 and bigger doesn't always mean quality,
Okay.
in terms of community. And I think that's really important to remember in both online spaces and, in-person spaces.
Oh, I absolutely love this because in my mind, what I'd like to share with the listeners is if you are a picture thinker, because I'm a picture thinker, if you are in a community, it should resemble a circle where sometimes you are in community, but you're standing on the opposite side, but there is that mutual respect.
Mm,
Community is not a straight line, so to speak.
yeah.
That's my Navajo-ness coming through. Community is a circle, not a straight line. Mic drop. No, just kidding. Anyway, Jenny, let's go on to the next question. And oh my goodness, this is so rich. I'm just salivating at everything and agreeing with everything. I mean, I'm not agreeing with, didn't I learn anything? Didn't I just learn that I'm not supposed to agree with everything? But I actually do.
You
Kindred.
can agree with me all the time. I'm
Oh,
fine
yes,
with it.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's a rule. I didn't mention that was a rule? Yeah, no, that's a rule.
I
That's a
love it.
community rule.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, I just wanted to kind of wrap it up here and have everybody kind of share. We shared some roadblocks for sure, right? So we shared this need for understanding where we came from. And this has been an ongoing conversation, I know, with Deborah Blake and Granddaughter Crow and I about like elders and people don't know who their elders are and how do we change that? And so that's a roadblock for sure. This divisiveness is a roadblock. And then another roadblock I heard is that people are not taking this seriously to be a scholar, right? So I think if you're on this path, you're a scholar. Like you can't not be. You have to read books. And that sometimes means reading books that you don't 100% agree with, but you find something useful or like at least like, well, I'd never do that in the book, right? So that's part of education. So those are some roadblocks I'm hearing. So to end it for people watching and listening, how do we still build community in 2026 and beyond? How do we find community? Just some like little tips and tricks and some insights. Because you're, like Matt said, we all have this platform. Whether you want people to look at you as a leader or not, it doesn't matter because you put the books out there and now they do, right? So as the in that position, what advice can we give to everyone?
I think it's really ironic that I somehow ended up being an elder. I'm like, wait, when did that happen? Because I don't feel like I know that much. But I think my best piece of advice, such as it is keep an open mind and keep an open heart. If you are looking for community, if you are looking for people who share your values and your beliefs, don't assume, Matt was talking about numbers. Don't assume that the loudest voice in the room is the right one. Because, I mean, I hate to keep talking about the stupid algorithm and the internet stuff, but just because somebody has 2 million followers on TikTok doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Um, and no, I don't have anybody in particular in mind. I do not have 2 million followers on TikTok. That's fine. But listen to the things people are actually saying and see if they resonate with you. And if you are lucky enough to have one person who you feel is your community, and they have one other person who is also their community, sometimes that ends up making that circle. So be open to new people, to new experiences, to learning things. And, we talk about books, obviously, we're all authors, so we want you to read books. Even if you don't read books, listen to the messages from the universe. There are places to learn that are not books. Now, should you learn from our books? Absolutely, you should. But there is knowledge available if you are following a witchcraft path, a pagan path. There is knowledge available to you if you open your heart, if you open your mind, open your spirit. And especially if you are looking for community, then just see if maybe you've been missing something because you're not looking in the right place.
Yeah, I most of that, yes. Good job, Deborah.
Okay, I'm done now.
What
Bye.
do I have to add to it? I think that like, you know, just looking at who is your favorite authors, right? And then looking at like, because this is kind of the in between of our whole discussion of like one of the benefits, like Judika was saying, is that like we can find people online and we can connect, you know? So, for me, like it was like, oh, like I love Christopher Penzak's books, I'm going to look at his online. Oh my God, he's got a thing in person close to me. And that's not always the case for things. But he also has a big online community, and I think sometimes following authors that you love, you can find other people. And I'm not saying like the author themselves, but like other people following that author that you automatically have something in common if you love their work, and that helps build community. Um, I I think, yeah, it comes down to like, what do you resonate with? Don't just look towards authors. Don't just look to like, you know, um, I guess
Influencers.
influencers. I
Mhm.
hate that word. I hate
I know. I just,
that and content creator. I don't know why the term content creator like skeeves me
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
absolutely.
it feels too like capitalist machine to me. Something about content, like I'm making content, like content for what? Like content. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of times, like also like when you do follow, an author that you like or a person that you like, often they will have different gigs, different speaking opportunities, whether that's in person or online. And those are always great ways to connect with other people as well. Not everyone is in a financial situation to be able to be going to conventions all the time and stuff like that as well, which is why, looking at like online community is so important. But I think finding what resonates with you in terms of the message of what they're saying, like there's people that look impressive online, but like I'm muting people all the time because it's like I don't need these horrible divisive hot takes all the time. And all of us have been around long enough to know that none of these are hot takes. These are like every talking point that's a hot take cycles. Like, oh yeah, we went through this phase of like, like tearing apart the threefold law, like 5 years ago, and it'll come back 5 years, or whatever the hot topic issue is. But I think for me personally, like if someone is constantly combating, constantly finding things to tear down, whether it's other people or ideas or things like that, that's going to give you a little bit of insight into what kind of community they're building and how it's ran, So I'm always looking for the builders, of ideas, of other people. I look for people that uplift other people as much, if not more, as what they're tearing down. Because tearing down also does serve its place, especially right now in the time we live in the world. But looking for the builders, it's very much like, Mr. Rogers being like, look for the helpers. I think it's a very similar idea, so look for the Miss Rachels in the world as well. My-
the word witch, the English word witch, derives from a root word meaning the ones who know. And that is true in a lot of languages, Indo-European and otherwise. Witches are characterized by curiosity. Um, we're not blind followers. I, I think to echo what I recommend, I mean, this is a little self-serving because I do teach spell casting and I have the book Matt wrote a forward for Pure Magic is a book that will teach you how to be a spellcaster on your, DIY spellcraft. You can do it if you're a human being with fear or a desire, you can cast a spell, I guarantee it. But even if you don't want to cast a spell for magical reasons, I recommend learning spell casting because it will refine the way you see things and how you hear things. It will you will your skills, your seeing and hearing, what people are really saying, what are the undercurrents, they will improve. So to echo Deborah, to build community, open heart, open hands, open mind, but also don't be gullible. People with 2 million followers, look at them. What are they good at? They're good at branding, they're good at marketing, they're
I
great
suck
at
at that.
marketing. They might not actually be good at what they're teaching.
Mm.
So, I mean, if you want to be a marketer, those are the people you should be watching. But if you want to be learning something more specialized, well, maybe you need to find the people who don't have huge followings,
Mm.
but are teaching that. I'd also like to say, in my life, I've had cycles. I've had cycles of having great community, covens, um, shared, common people, but I've also had periods of solitude. And community is a wonderful thing, and it is beneficial, and it is healing, and the right communities are, that's where you want to be, but you shouldn't feel pressured. Oh my God, I have to get into a community, online or offline. I have to, and I'm going to compromise all these things. And I'm not feeling good about this, but I need to be in a community. Sometimes you're going to have periods of solitude. Doesn't mean you're going to have a period of solitude forever. It's just these things sometimes come in waves. So you want to find the right place for you, the right people for you. And sometimes it's the right place and the right people for a time,
Time,
and then
yes.
it's not anymore. And that's all right. Sometimes they've changed, you've changed, it's just evolution. You need something else. So it's just evolution and growing and learning to be the best person you can be, and finding the people who you feel comfortable with and who will help you with that. And maybe you'll help them.
100. I absolutely love it. So, one of the things that I'm hearing is cycles. We do go through cycles. Listen to tone, listen to the messages. It's about quality, not necessarily quantity. However, if you do run into somebody that just gets your goat, or however they say that in these days, there's a message for you in there. It's not always kind of like a dialogue. We don't come together to dialogue in order to firmly agree on everything. What we're doing is we are sharing from our perspective, which has no yes men, which has scholars, which absolutely has curiosity. Um, I am, I may look very, very outgoing, but in truth, I'm sitting down with this wonderful community that I have never met in person. Believe it or not, I've never met Ginny C. Bell in person. Yeah, you'd think we don't. Yeah, we found each other online because one day I was scrolling and I saw her on Instagram, and it was a time when there was a lot of censorship or fear of more censorship to the spiritual and witch community, and I was feeling that, and I saw Jenny C. Bell standing there. This is the hill that I will die on, and I said, "That's my girl right there." That's it. It's sometimes, and then when you find that connection, then you learn and grow together. I also want to say, let this conversation continue within yourself. Allow it to give it some space, because as we're moving through, we're not sheeple people. We are okay. We are an island of misfit toys. We are all here seeing things from different perspectives, which actually helps us to grow and release our blind spots. And with that, Ginny, is there anything that I am leaving out?
No, I think this is beautiful. I think it's needed. And I agree. I think people need to define community. I think if you're listening, you're watching this, define what community means to you, reflect on that. And I love the idea of being open but not gullible. I think that's a really good takeaway. If you're looking for community, be open but not gullible.
Mm. Well, thanks to each of you for sitting down in this beautiful chat, this beautiful roundtable dialogue. Thank you, listeners. I hope that you got something out of this. Apparently, you don't have to agree with everything that we say, even though we're authors. Just that kind of thing. But also, like, subscribe, share with those who you feel would benefit from this message. And yeah, let's build community together and stand in solidarity with the rest of the island of misfit toys, but not the haters. Mwah! Love you guys, and we will see you
Thank you.
on the flippity flip. Thank you for listening to another episode of Belief, Being, and Beyond. Please subscribe and share with whomever would enjoy this podcast. And please leave us a review. We really, really appreciate that. For more about Granddaughter Crow, granddaughtercrow.com. There you can learn about her classes, sessions, and all of her books. And for more about Ginny C. Bell, please visit ginnycbell.com, where you can learn about her books, her classes, and our coven community. Thank you so much for listening.